Hello, welcome to another episode of Medical Receptionist Network podcast. My name is Shivhon Adkins, and I am going to be the host for the show today, and I am rolling solo. We're going to talk about some professional and personal benefits to being in healthcare, especially in the role as a medical receptionist or medical secretary. And I have a couple of things I want to, discuss today. If you have not grabbed your medical receptionist handbook to success, I definitely recommend that you look that up. Available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Definitely a great tool, great resource. Share it with your friends, share it with your employer. Definitely some benefit and great information and tools in there for you. Again, our website is medicalreceptionistnetwork.com. We're still working on that, so in the next couple of weeks we'll have a beautiful site for you to visit and contact us. In the meantime, you can reach Medical Receptionist Network at info@medicalreceptionistnetwork.com. That's info@medicalreceptionistnetwork.com. You can email with any questions. You can also email if you're interested in being a guest on this podcast, because we want to hear from you. We want to share your view of your position or your experiences in healthcare with everyone, because we definitely we want to share all the information that we can and keep an open line of communication to hear the various opinions as well as experiences and maybe other tools and tips that may help us that we haven't heard yet. So today, as I said, we're going to be discussing the benefits of being a medical receptionist. I always found that one of the biggest benefits is fostering relationships in the healthcare field with other healthcare professionals. And I have to be honest, at the beginning of my career, I don't believe I took that as seriously as I do now. I didn't find necessarily the value in it. It was kind of like, I have a job, I'm going to do my work and, get my check, and I'm going to go home. And, I didn't see the future or really have any goals related to healthcare for my future. So it took me a little while to start really fostering relationships that have lasted, years and years. But my biggest thing is, imagine had I done that at the beginning of my career, in my early 20s, when when I just had the opportunity to do so. So one of the things I definitely recommend is that you foster relationships that are not just friends and personal, but people that are going to provide you with some of the professional and advice or support that you may need later on down the line, and hopefully you're able to help them as well. But you definitely want to have people on your team that will be honest with you, that will maybe tell you and show you things that you never thought of or you didn't think of for your career, for your everyday interaction with other people in the field and things like that. Because the bottom line is, a lot of times, people can potentially leave a job and leave in a bad way, to where they no longer have a reference. And some people look at that and say, oh, I have plenty of other references. But you never know where you're going to meet someone again. And while the world is large, it's also a very small world, and you don't want to create that negative energy behind your career. You don't want to create a path that has all of these gaps and holes and things you don't want to share in your resume, or stories you don't want to tell a future employer about, or things that would just affect you in the future and your professional life. So one of the things I always say, I figure, if you're working with an employer and you're having a lot of issues, or you seem to be the center of a lot of problems or conflict, before you just walk away and take that same energy into another office, just look at yourself and look at what your part is in that, and try to resolve it where you are first, and then if you feel after that okay, this is not the best office for me, this is not the best culture for me, then you move on. But you move on knowing that you tried your best, you've taken actually a look inside yourself instead of looking around at everyone else and saying, this person said this person did this person never gets the patients up on time. Instead of always putting the blame elsewhere, look at what you can do differently to try to change your situation, because then at least you've tried. If it doesn't work, you can leave with a reasonable have a reasonable exit and still keep a professional relationship with that office or the practice or healthcare facility that you're working with. It tends to become uncomfortable when you go on interviews and they ask you specific questions about your past employment, and you're sitting there and you don't even want them to call that place, or you omit it, and then they wonder why you haven't worked in 2 or 3 years or 5 years or whatever the case may be. It's just not worth it. You want to make your next steps as easy as possible, filled with positive experiences, or at least experiences where you can at least say you had, a learning experience, a growing experience, an opportunity to expand your professional ability and your customer service and your quality of service that you provide to the patients, and the communication that you have within the office with other clinical providers. So always something to think about. Sometimes we can't avoid certain situations, but for the most part, we really can, kind of tame it down and be able to walk away with our head up and still have, a positive communication and a positive reputation, and, take from that experience everything that you could that was good and take it to the next place, and leave all the negativity or the bad experiences or, bad situations behind you. And you want to always creating a positive job history. Immediately it may not feel like a big deal, next 2-3 years, but when you go 5 and 6 years down the line, it may become more important. Maybe you're changing your direction. Maybe you want to get into management. Maybe you're changing your profession. I've seen medical assistants go to becoming a registered nurse. I've seen medical receptionists, just the way that I did it, have become, practice administrators, office managers. And you want to always be forward thinking. If this is a career path that you enjoy and you see yourself in for a long time, you want to make sure that your background is reflective of, where you're going. So if you're already on the right path, make sure you keep that up and don't let anything get in your way, and like I said, you foster those relationships because you never know where you'll be, and you keep in touch with the people who were positive in your employment experience. If you have someone who was kind of a mentor to you, who you looked up to in that field, or someone that you said, oh wow, they're following a path that I would like to follow in the future, then keep those relationships, because you never know how you'll be able to connect later on in life. And that's been very positive for me. But like I said, if you have an opportunity to start early, definitely start early, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You never know how you may connect with someone else regarding other abilities and talents that you have that may or may not be directly related to what you're doing today. The other thing I would say is, you have an opportunity to test new ways to run your front office and your operations. When I say test, I don't mean every day you're changing the entire process, but you have the opportunity to improve things and, on your own without even anyone telling you what to do. Say you have patients coming up to the desk, you give them paperwork, or, ask them to complete something that's required for your providers, and you notice that everyone comes up multiple times, and maybe they're not clear on this, or they're not clear on question you're asking or information you're requesting. And so now the next day you can say, you know what, yesterday 3 people came up, they asked the same question. Today when I hand over this clipboard or hand over this tablet, I'm going to explain these 3 things briefly before they sit down. And just those little things could change. And you can say, okay, well, I did that, and now, today I only had 1 person come up with an additional question as opposed to 3. Like, those little things can create such a difference in your flow of your front office, and the efficiency of how you and the rest of your team at the front work together. And, trying those little things, and maybe you just do it on your own, you don't tell anyone, and then you say, listen, you can talk to your manager or talk to your coworkers and say, hey, look, I noticed a lot of patients are coming up. They're asking about this, or we're not being very clear about this specific question, or even IT. Maybe it's something that just needs to be changed in the way that the question is worded or the information request is situated. So, if it's IT or something you need to change on paper, you can say, look, I tried this for this week. On Monday and Tuesday, I did it the way we've been doing it. I had 7 people come up. On during the rest of the week, I switched the process and I gave them some additional information up front, and it was really a time saver. Can we add this to the form, or can we make this standard that everyone gives our patients this information up front? So you have the power to make those changes, because often your manager or your administrator, they may not be at the front desk with you all the time, and they don't always see those little intricate things that may need changes that really affect you and what you do and how much time you're spending, putting charts up and getting, patients to the back and, helping out the clinical staff in that way. So that's that's your job. That's your place. That's where you can show that you're paying attention, that you have the ability to come up with better ideas and ideas that are going to help the overall practice or medical center itself. So never be afraid to come up with something new, and even think about some of the things that you and your coworkers discuss, or things that are like pain points. And when this happens, this is an issue for us. When you have those conversations, always try to think about the solution. Instead of focusing on it's a problem, it's a problem, it's a problem, let's focus on how can we change this? What other things can we do to make this process flow, in a way that is more beneficial to not only us, to the patient, to the providers or the lab, or, whatever it may be. And you have the power to do that. And sometimes when people are working at the front desk, and I've worked with people who, they never offer their opinion, they never want to talk. You have a meeting and everyone doesn't want anyone to ask a question because everyone wants to go home. But then you come back the next day and you have the same complaints, the same, issues and problems that were there before you had the meeting. And it's like, use those times, instead of being, um, instead of being disengaged, try to engage a little more to where you can improve. And trust me, if you're making improvements all the time, those meetings will be shorter. If you come to the meeting with your 3 questions written down, you ask them, you get them out the way, that's fine, and allow for a short time for discussion, that's fine. But some people don't even do that. They rather come into work every day, see this, similar issues taking place, and then never providing a solution, not even an idea, not even, it's just, this is what it is. But the bottom line is you can always make changes, and you'd be surprised what you could accomplish if you use your voice and your own knowledge that you've gained from being, sitting at the front desk, engaging with patients, engaging with guests that come into your practice or your office, and learning, what the patterns are. That's one thing that you have that everyone else in your office doesn't, because if they're not up there, they don't know, so they can assume. But the bottom line is, just like if you don't double as a medical assistant, you don't always know how things flow for them in the back office, or, how things flow when the lab is overwhelmed with patients, coming in specific for the lab, or specific, being sent up from the rooms, patients that are already there. So, you never assume that until you've had an opportunity to witness, the process full on for, a few days or a few weeks. And then you say, okay, now you look at that, and sometimes that's helpful. When you learn how the process works behind you, now you know how you can improve your own process to create a better flow for the entire office. So there's always multiple ways to do things, and I think when we're open to that, and you have these discussions with your management and your coworkers, it also provides that teamwork and that team-based presence, to where you all know, okay, look, if we do this, this will be better, and everyone just has to be willing to try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times, when you start having a little trial and error, you will find that there are ways, that as a medical receptionist, as a medical secretary, you can create an environment that that patients will be very, happy to come into. They'll be happy to engage with you and give you all the information you need to do your job, because they see that you're on top of everything and that you want to get them in. You want to get them through the process. You want to provide them any paperwork, information, updates that they need. And, as a medical receptionist, one of the other benefits is you get to improve your professional skills. Just as I discussed, you get to improve your communication skills, and you get to, you're speaking to people from, depending on, it really doesn't depend where you are. Your patients and your patient population is generally going to be from all walks of life and from different, places and different areas, and you get to engage with them on a pretty basic level, but a professional level. And whether that's over the phone or face to face, you can always be improving your communication skills. If people if you speak low and people are saying huh huh huh, you learn that, okay, I need to speak up. I've had that issue. It's weird. I sound like I'm speaking loudly. Apparently, it wasn't so much for everyone else. So that was something that I've had to gradually work on personally. And then just your conversation skills in knowing when to kind of shorten those conversations, especially if you have sometimes a patient will walk in and they want to talk to you as if you're friends, right? They want to stand at the front desk and talk about a bunch of different things that have nothing to do with their appointment. And sometimes that can back you up. It's taking you away from, answering the phone or, taking care of the next patient quickly enough, or even getting that patient who's standing there in front of you, getting their information in, or, getting their chart to the back, or whatever it is you need to do. And sometimes it becomes a distraction. So learning how to kind of cut those things off without being rude, that's something, that's a skill, because sometimes, some people are so aggressive with the way that they speak and the way that they communicate that you almost feel bad to cut them off, without, or you don't know how to cut them off without being rude. And it's just as simple as, saying, you know what, Miss Smith, this is a great conversation, but I really want to get you in with the doctor. So if you don't mind, I'm going to get your chart. Please have a seat, and sometimes you have to do that, because otherwise you'll be there, for an hour trying to figure it out, or they come out and they will do the same thing on the way out. And I've seen that happen. And if you're a talker yourself, always be conscious of what's going on around you, because if your coworker is now taking 4 or 5 patients while you're sitting here talking to someone who, just wants to be friendly, you might have to say, look, I need to assist, my team here so we can get everybody in. Then you have to say that. You have to be, pretty concrete about it and move into the next step of whatever you're doing. But sometimes it's almost as if, people get into a conversation, or they, get into this with someone, that came into the office, even if it's a pharmaceutical representative or someone who, has some goodies for the office. You don't have to, just because they brought something in does not mean you have to engage with them for a long period of time. If you have work to do, you have to, avert your attention back to where it needs to be. So it's very important. Always be conscious of that. If there's no one there and it's really slow and you were able to get the chart up and the patient is talking, okay, fine, you can give them a couple extra minutes. But still, just because there's no one there, that doesn't mean you don't have things that you have to complete for the day and for your office to continue running smoothly. So that's always the priority, is obviously taking care of the patient and then making sure everything else is going smoothly. So sometimes you have to just step up and say, look, we're done here, in the nicest way possible, but don't be afraid of that, and don't be intimidated by, someone who comes and speaking loud and fast, and you just feel like you have to stay in that conversation or, in that communication, because they are there for an appointment, and that's what you're going to make sure happens. A couple other things. One thing that, people tend to say when they're thinking about changing jobs in healthcare, especially for, medical receptionists, like, oh, the grass is not always greener. But then on the other hand, you can say, oh, but we have to get uncomfortable and we have to try new things. I would definitely say, if you're ever interested in moving on, or maybe you're moving out of state and, you're going to have to take on a new position, always go in with a clear mind, and be open to what could be. Sometimes the grass is not always greener. Other times you walk into a situation that, you know, speaks to you as a healthcare, professional and a medical receptionist, and you love the setup and you love the people you work with, and the culture is, right up your alley, and you just feel at home there. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and I've seen people come and go to the same office I left and returned to a practice before, and you know when you do that, sometimes you feel like you're taking a step back, but it's all in how you approach it and how you look at it. It turned out to be one of the best things that I could have done for myself. A lot of other people had that same experience, and not to say they never did eventually move on, but at the time, it just, wasn't the right move for them. So always just take into account, when you're leaving somewhere or when you're considering it, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Can the issue or problem or whatever is turning me away from this place, or turning me off, or making me want to explore something different? Is it more of me, or is it more of, the atmosphere, or, any, negative experiences that you're having, or abusive, interaction you're having with anyone there? But definitely do your pros and cons before you, run to the next place. Especially if when we go one place to another to do the exact same thing, you have to find the growth somewhere. So there has to be either, I've learned all I can here, I really don't feel like there's much more for me to learn or to do or to perfect, and I really want to try another specialty or something. Like, those things make sense. But when you're just leaving because you have kind of these inter-office, really, when you look at the bigger scheme of things, um, conflicts, sometimes you have to, it's better off, as I said before, like, look at what your role is, see if you can fix that, or find solutions to that before you take that energy into another place. It's just best that you do that, because if you take that same experience and you assume that the next place you go to is going to be just like that, you may set yourself up for another negative experience. And I think there's so many positive things to gain from working in a healthcare setting, from working with physicians, nurse practitioners, midwives, medical assistants, nurses. I mean, you can create relationships that will last a lifetime, and not only professionally, but personally. I can say I worked with a physician once for many, a couple of years, and then later on down the line, I had to take a family member to see one of the physicians that I used to work with, and that doctor ended up finding an issue that my family member's original physician did not find, and it resulted in taking care of a problem that had lasted quite a long time. So it's just like, professionally and personally, these are healthcare providers. This is, it's not like you're working for someone who you may never ever see again, especially depending on where you live, how large your networks are in your area. So, always, think about that, and just go in every day with your mind open and a clear head, and know that you're there, to build yourself up and to provide your patients with the best experience at the office. It starts with you, it ends with you. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for listening to the Medical Receptionist Network podcast. My name is Shivhon Adkins. I look forward to coming back with you on our next episode. And again, if you haven't got your copy of the Medical Receptionist Handbook to Success, you can find that on Amazon.com. And I would love to hear your feedback. And again, you can email me, info@medicalreceptionistnetwork.com. And until then, you are the bridge. Have a wonderful day.